What's up, everybody? My name is Pastor Marcus Timmons, the senior pastor here at Union Baptist here in Burlington, Iowa. And welcome to Grounded Conversations, where our goal is just simply to help you stay grounded in everyday life. And so we're just coming in here with some practical insights, some tools to help us stay grounded as believers as we go through everyday life. And so today I just want to go ahead and jump right into it. We're going to deal with offense, how to handle offense, and how to stay grounded when we are, for lack of better terms, offended. When we feel offended, when we feel like somebody has done us wrong, we feel wronged, or, in the result of that, the hurt, the confusion, and all that stuff that comes with being offended. We're going to deal with it because here's the reality is that offenses will come. There is no escaping offenses. And I know we want to escape that reality, but we cannot. Offenses, issues, people, as long as we're still breathing, we're going to deal with something, and that's called people. We're going to deal with people. And offenses are going to come. There's going to be something that might have been said or done that hurts you, that puts you in this space of confusion as to why would you say that to me, And so it's not a matter of you never being offended. It's just how do we handle them when we are feeling offended. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I want to give you a quick scripture that I think will help you and help us on this journey of how to handle offenses. Colossians 3:13 says, "Make allowances for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others." This hits me because it doesn't say to ignore people's faults. It says make room for them, right? It's almost like you expect it, right? Now, I'm not talking about walking around, with your guard up, and somebody is going to, and just, keeping everybody out because you're afraid of being hurt by people. I think what we have to understand is as long as we're living in an imperfect world, a fallen world, we're gonna be dealing with broken people, and broken people bring broken mess with them. And it doesn't even, and let's just take it off from people, just put it back on yourselves. If we're going to deal with, if we're going to move forward in this life with even ourselves, as we move forward rather, we're broken, right? And so there might be an offense that you might have caused, you didn't think much of it. And I think that as long as we're dealing with people, we're human, our humanity, we have to understand that offenses, the hurts, all the stuff, it's going to happen. There's no way to avoid it. And that's why I don't necessarily subscribe a whole lot to church hurt, because the same amount of hurt that I get from church, I'm probably going to get it from work too, right? I'm probably going to get it from being at the gym or, in my relationship, my wife, my children, whatever. No matter what, what area of life you're in, you're going to find yourself getting hurt. And so how do we handle it, right? How do we learn how to leave space for that? Because when you leave that space, it's almost like you are lessening the expectations. You're understanding that there's this dynamic and dichotomy with people. And as long as you are in a world full of people, they're going to make mistakes. And what I found out, for me, a lot of things that I took offense to was just a result of my trauma, some unhealed wound. If I felt like somebody's disrespecting me, it was just a result of an unhealed wound. It wasn't necessarily that they were coming off disrespectful. It's that, to me, or at least they were intending to come off disrespectful, intending to be hurtful. But to me, that might have just been an offense for me. I'll give you a quick example of what I mean by this is that, and I just had a thought, and I just wanted to come on here. And so this is not necessarily scripted. It's just me sharing my heart with somebody to help somebody become more grounded in their walk with Christ instead of getting tossed from to and fro. And so, quick story. I want to say it was early this year. I was mowing grass, and somebody had came through the church, and they said, "Oh, I didn't know you mowed the church's grass." They said, "I thought you were lazy. I thought, I didn't know that you did this type of stuff." And I'm like, well, for me, that I did get offended. I did get bothered, right? Now, it's not like the person, and again, let me go back, because it's not like they intended to offend me. They just were shocked that I was out at the church mowing grass, and I did get offended. In my mind, I was like, I've been doing this literally since I was young, been mowing the grass, been primarily taking care of the church facilities and all that stuff. And I've been the one to do it. And I was offended. I was a bit hurt by that. I really was. But when I actually paused for a moment and kind of, process as to what was my feelings and all that stuff, I realized that, the offense, the reason why I was so offended and taken back is because it just triggered a wound, right? A wound of people's negative perception about me, right? This feeling of having to prove people wrong, that no, I am capable of X, Y, and Z. I can do X, Y, and Z. And all it did was it just hit a wound. It just hit a wound. And it wasn't like the person was necessarily wrong for that perspective. They just never seen me out here doing work, even though I have always done the work. And it was just they were just taken back by it, and they just said, "Oh, well, we just always thought that was up to somebody else. We assumed, growing up, you were just lazy, not willing to do a whole lot," and which is further from the truth. But that was just their perception. I say all that to say is that that hurt me, and now pride, if I was prideful, I would have been trying to prove my point, saying, no, I've been doing this whole time. But I'm glad that the Lord was dealing with me on offenses at that time, which helped me to stay grounded even when I was upset or even hurt, and I was able to handle it in a mature fashion. And guess what? I didn't have to bring it up to him. I didn't have to say, well, you hurt me, because the reality of it is that they didn't mean to, right? When I really began to pause and really think about it, they didn't mean to. They didn't think like that. And so some stuff, is not necessarily disrespect, but oftentimes it's our own wounds. And so that's why it's good to making sure that we're putting in the work to heal and to grow, so we're not so easily offended. But here's the reality. As long as you're breathing, you're going to deal with people, and people who are broken themselves, have issues themselves, hurt people. And so as long as we're living, we're gonna always find ourselves being offended by something. But how we handle the offense makes the difference. All right. So I just want to give us just 3 ways to handle offenses. Okay. Because really, when you look at offenses, the word offense, it's really a trap. It's a bait. I would say that it is Satan's bait to keep us trapped. Trapped in what? Trapped in hurt, anger, frustration, confusion, all these different things. It's Satan's bait to keep us trapped. That's all offenses are. It's Satan's bait to keep us trapped. Trapped in our feelings, trapped in our hurt, trapped in bitterness, trapped in frustration. He wants to keep us stuck. He wants to keep us so fixated on the person, on the issue. And I'm here to tell you, don't take the bait. And so this is 3 ways I'm going to give you how to handle offenses. Okay, so let me give it to you real quick. The first thing I want to give you is pause. That is, pause before you react. Now, this is going to take some practice. This is practice, right? Because what every offense wants is a reaction. What every offense wants is a reaction. And what happens is that quick reactions have a way of making things worse. So my encouragement to you is to take a breath, pray, pause, do whatever you got to do before you respond. Sometimes silence is probably the strongest response you can ever give. I have won many of my battles, things that I have wrestled with, whether it be from offense, from just people being people, whatever, my critics, whatever, by remaining silent. Sometimes silence does not always mean you're weak. Silence doesn't mean your weakness. You just know how to pause and really really slow down before allowing whatever it is to try to influence you negatively, right? So if I react to the offense, just like the kind of story that I gave you, if I reacted to that, that might have escalated to an argument, right? But because I was able to pause and try to process that, or to pause before I reacted, I was able to handle the situation better, and come to find out it really wasn't the person. It was just a wound that they just happened to hit. And that wound simply was me trying to always prove something to somebody. Insecurity, look what I'm doing. I know I've been putting in the work. And it was just a wound. And it just exposed something that I needed to heal from. And notice that I'm pointing a lot of attention back to myself, because I think oftentimes when dealing with offenses, we want to point the finger at everybody else. But sometimes, again, like I said earlier, sometimes it's not necessarily their intention. I did a conversation before about if how to identify true toxic traits, because sometimes people are not necessarily toxic. You're just triggered, and I think we have a way of labeling people and putting people in this box the moment that they hurt you. And now it's like, oh, no, I don't want nothing to do with you. Now they're evil. Now they're this. Now they're that. Maybe they were just having a bad day. Maybe you're just triggered, and we have to really learn how to separate being toxic, what being toxic is, really what toxicity is, within people versus whether or not you're just triggered. And I argue that more often than not, you're probably just triggered more than the other person's toxic. I'm not saying toxic people don't exist. What I'm saying is, more often than not, it might just be you're triggered. And maybe ask the question, why did what you said, or why did, when you said that, why did that bother me? Why was I so upset by this thing that this person said? Why was I so, what caused me? And so do a lot of self-reflection, because I think that helps us to stop pointing the finger at everybody else and start really looking at ourselves. Because listen, the person who offended me, I can't change them. I think we got to stop trying to change people. I can't change the fact that somebody said this and somebody said that. I can prevent it maybe moving forward in the sense of one or two ways. Maybe we can have a conversation and I can share, hey, this is what. But if that person is not in a mature, at a mature level, they're going to take what you said and they're going to probably be offended by you even coming at them, for thinking that they offended you, so that's important. So you gotta exercise discernment. You have to exercise wisdom and all these different things. You have to exercise these things. And then, or number two, just like I said, just really check yourself. Ultimately, check yourself, ask yourself again. I had another point. Again, this is just on the top of my head, so I'm really just flowing. And I was going somewhere with that, but I lost it, but that's all right. But anyway, so again, pause before you react. That's so important. That's so important. And sometimes, again, silence is the strongest response you can give. So pause. You don't have to address certain things right away. And half the time when you really pause and really begin to reflect and think about it, most of the time it's just not really worth it, right? So pause. Ask questions. Why did this bother me? What caused me to act this way, or whatever, okay? Number two, I want you to process with God and not gossip. I want you to process. Process with God, not gossip. So before you run and tell your friends about what has happened, why don't you talk to God? Why don't you pray? Why don't we learn how to go to the Lord first, right? Why don't we learn how to, why don't we learn how to really, why doesn't he become our first response rather than our last response, right? So when we don't get the answers we want from everybody else, we'll go to the Lord. We'll finally go to the Lord, but maybe let him be your first response. Before you vent to your friends, your spouse, or whoever, take time and really process with the Lord, right? Let him show you what's in your heart, right? Again, it goes back to the why, asking yourself. And now you're not just asking yourself. Now you're going to the Lord and say, Lord, why? When David says, or the psalm writer says, I can't remember if it was David or who. I'm going to say maybe it was Psalm 51. No, it's David. Yeah, in Psalm 51 when he says, search the depth of my heart, right? And pretty much he says, search the depth of my heart and reveal anything that might hinder you, that's an offense to you. And so we want the Lord in that time of prayer, in that time of processing and praying to the Lord, he's able to search that, what has happened in my life. And he's able, this Bible says that the Spirit brings things up to surface, right? He'll bring things up. And so God will dig deep and figure out what has happened and transpired in your life, and then he'll bring it to surface. But the goal when he brings it to surface is not for you to just lash out on it. When he brings those things to surface, that past, experience that has happened, the hurts, the pain, and all that stuff that has happened, when he brings that to surface, it is not for you just to say, oh, here it is, and then do nothing with it. It's for you to say, okay, Lord, here this is. This is why this triggered me. This is why I'm offended. This is why I'm hurt. This is why I feel this way. So because this is it, and he, in the Spirit, the Lord shows you that. Now it's up to you now to say, okay, Lord, thank you for showing me. Now you heal me. You deliver me from this. You take this, Lord, But here's the kicker. You cannot heal from what you constantly keep rehearsing. So after you pause, right? That is before you react. And then number 2, after you process, number 3, you got to protect your peace. You stop rehearsing the hurt. Stop rehearsing, keep playing it back and forth. You're going to make yourself more angry, more frustrated, more irritable, more resentful by constantly replaying the conversation that you had with somebody that led to the offense. You're going crazy. So number 3 is you got to protect your peace. You got to stop rehearsing. You got to stop rehearsing the issue. You got to stop rehearsing the offense. After you've paused, after you process, forgive first. And if you need a conversation, make sure the conversation comes for after the forgiveness. And I just said something. If you have to have a conversation, if that's what the Lord has put on you, you got to get this off of you, need to have this conversation, make sure it comes after you've already forgiven him. Don't wait for the conversation to make the decision, after the conversation, to make the decision to forgive them. Make the decision to forgive them before having the conversation. Because if you do not forgive them before the conversation, what's going to happen is you're still carrying all that hurt. And what's going to come out? That hurt. Right? And you're going to find every reason, because the moment they say something, maybe to defend themselves, to whatever, then there you are. Now you're back at a 10. It just undid everything that that you're trying to have this conversation with this person. And what if they, if they narcissist or whatever, they throw it back at you, what if they throw it back at you? What if they try to downplay it or whatever? If you have not taken the steps to forgive them, then you leave room for that hurt to constantly build if they do something else to offend you. In that the moment you come to address it. So before you address it, already make up in your mind that you're going to forgive. And even if they don't apologize, right? Get this, and I know it's old saying, but it's true. Forgiveness isn't for them, it's for you. Your peace is too expensive to waste it on being offended. Your peace is too expensive to waste it on being offended. Your peace is too expensive for you to constantly waste it on being offended. When God has so much more he wants to do, but offense is there to keep you trapped. It's there to keep you stuck. It's bait, okay? It's bait. God has so much more he wants to do in your life, but yet we're holding on to all this unforgiveness, all the offenses, all the hurt from people who probably don't even know any better, right? You maybe you have mama issues, right, or daddy issues. Maybe mama didn't do her part raising you up. Maybe your daddy wasn't present. Listen, maybe they were there, but they just weren't physically or mentally there. Maybe they didn't affirm you, love you the way you felt like you should have been loved, and as a father or mother, as a parent owes is due to their children. But understand, maybe they didn't have that model for them. And it's easy to point the finger and say, well, you didn't do this, and I'm angry, and I'm mad at you. But maybe they didn't have a model for them. Maybe they didn't have a model for them. Somebody once told me, they said, man, I'm so mad that my parents didn't teach me about money. They didn't teach me about money. I'm so mad about that. And I said to them, they didn't teach you about it because they didn't know about it themselves. And I cannot give you what I do not know. And so oftentimes we're holding offenses against people who just simply don't know any better, right? So while you're wasting your peace, wasting your energy, holding on to these offenses, they're out there living their life, right? So number 3, you got to protect your peace. Your peace is too expensive to be wasting it on staying offended, all right? So listen, that's my 3 ways to how to handle offense. I hope this conversation blessed you. Listen, if you are anywhere near Burlington, Iowa, and you're looking to visit a church, you're looking for a church home, I want to encourage you to join us every Sunday at 11 a.m. I preach like this. I talk like this. Man, every week I try to give a practical message about how to handle and get through this thing called life. I try to show people and point people to the gospel as clear and as best as I can, and how we can apply the gospel to our everyday life. If you're breathing, that means you have life. And so I think God wants us to prosper. I truly believe that. And so listen, if this blessed you, I want to encourage you. I preach like this. I teach like this all the time. And I want to invite you to be my guest, be our guest at Union. And if these things, and if you're already a member, and if you are being blessed by this, man, I want to encourage you to sow. I want to encourage you to sow into what God is doing, to sow into the ministry, so we can get more of this type of content out. That's really going to help us move forward. The information is on the description. If you want to give, you want to visit us, you want to give, information is on the description below. And until next time, my friend, I'm Pastor Marcus, and this is Grounded Conversations. I'm praying for you. I love you, and I hope to see you soon. God bless you. God keep you. Until next time. Peace.